It does not matter what time it is right now. Darkness does not care about clocks. It does not care whether the sun is up or the world outside your window looks safe and ordinary. What I am about to tell you will find you regardless, in the middle of the night or the middle of the day, because real fear does not wait for darkness. Real fear lives inside you, and once it is planted, the light changes nothing. 3 people looked up at the sky, and something looked back, and from that moment forward, they were never the same again. Not broken, not crazy, just permanently, irreversibly, psychologically changed, as if something had reached inside their minds and rearranged everything they thought they knew about this world. These are their stories, and before this video ends, they may become yours too. You are watching FearImprint, where horror doesn't just scare you, it stays with you forever. Tonight we go somewhere most minds were never meant to go. Settle in, turn off the lights, and whatever you do, do not look up. Imagine a road you have driven 100 times. A road so familiar you could navigate it with your eyes closed. The same bends, the same shadows, the same silence broken only by the hum of your engine and the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. You know this road. You trust this road. It has never given you reason to be afraid. Now imagine driving that road one night and realizing, somewhere deep in the part of your brain that exists only to keep you alive, that something is wrong. Not wrong in a way you can see or name or explain. Wrong in the way that makes every hair on your body stand perfectly still. Wrong in the way that makes your lungs forget how to breathe. A couple we will call Thomas and Margaret had driven mountain roads like this their entire lives. They were quiet, practical people, the kind who trusted what they could see and touch and measure. They did not believe in things that went bump in the night. They did not look for monsters in the dark. They were adults, rational, grounded, safe. It began as a light, just a light, high in the sky above the tree line, moving in a way that lights do not move, not the steady trajectory of a plane, not the slow drift of a satellite. This light moved with intention. It changed direction without slowing. It dropped altitude without warning. And no matter how fast Thomas drove, it kept pace, perfectly, effortlessly, as if the concept of speed meant nothing to whatever was carrying it. Margaret watched it through the window. She told herself it was nothing, a weather balloon, military aircraft, something ordinary dressed in unusual clothes. She told herself this until Thomas pulled the car over and stepped outside and raised his eyes to the sky. And then she heard a sound she had never heard from him before in 20 years of marriage. Silence. Complete and total silence. Not the silence of a man who has nothing to say. The silence of a man whose mind has just encountered something it was never built to process. Above them, hovering without sound, without wind, without any of the mechanical logic that human-made flying objects require, was something vast, something dark at its edges and impossibly bright at its center, something that seemed less like a physical object and more like a hole cut into the fabric of the night sky itself, a window into somewhere else entirely. And at the edge of that light, shapes, watching. Thomas described what happened next in fragments, the only way his mind could process it afterward. A sound that was not quite sound but felt like pressure building inside his skull. A warmth that came from no direction in particular. A feeling of being seen, completely, nakedly, invasively seen, by someone that understood everything about him in the space of a single breath. Then the light moved directly above them, and everything went dark. They woke up in the car, parked at an angle on the side of the road, as if someone had simply placed them there. The engine was off. The headlights were off. Every clock and watch and phone between them showed a time that was impossible. 3 hours had passed. 3 hours that existed nowhere in their memory. 3 hours cut cleanly from their lives like pages torn from a book. But the time was not the worst part. The worst part was what Margaret found when she looked in the visor mirror. Her eyes. Something was wrong with her eyes. Not physically, not visibly, but behind them. In them, she told doctors later, that it felt as though something had been inside her mind, had walked through it the way you walk through a house. Opening doors, looking in rooms, examining things that were never meant to be examined. She felt rearranged, as if the furniture of her innermost self had been moved just slightly. Not enough to name, not enough to prove, but enough that nothing ever felt quite right again. Thomas never drove at night again. Not once. Not for the rest of his life. He could not explain why. He simply could not make himself do it. Something inside him, something below conscious thought, something ancient and animal and terrified, refused. They never spoke publicly about what happened that night on the mountain road. They told only their closest family, and even then only once, because every time they tried to find words for it, the words fell apart. Language was not built for this. The human mind was not built for this. Some experiences exist outside the boundaries of what we are designed to survive, and this was one of them. On the ceiling above their bed that night, and for many nights after, Margaret said she could still feel it. That vast, cold clinical attention, still present, still watching, as if whatever had looked at her on that mountain road had left something behind, something inside her that was not hers, something that watched back. Our second encounter takes us somewhere far from mountain roads and familiar darkness. It takes us to a place where the witnesses were the last people on earth you would expect to be chosen, the last people whose testimony you would expect to shake the foundations of scientific understanding. They were not adults. They were not soldiers or pilots or scientists. They were children, and what they saw left marks that decades could not erase. There is something particularly disturbing about a child's fear, not because children are more fragile than adults, though perhaps they are, but because children have not yet learned to doubt themselves. They have not yet been taught that certain things cannot exist. They have not yet constructed the elaborate psychological walls that adults build to keep the impossible safely outside their reality. A child who sees something terrifying simply sees it, completely, nakedly, without protection of disbelief. On an ordinary school morning at an ordinary school in a small dusty town surrounded by open African bushland, more than 60 children went outside for their morning break. They ran and laughed and chased each other across the sun-baked ground. Their teachers were inside. The sky above was wide and blue and completely, deceptively ordinary. Then one child stopped running, then another, until the entire playground had fallen into a silence so complete and so sudden that the teachers inside the building felt the absence of noise like a physical pressure change, and looked up from their work. Beyond the fence at the edge of the playground, in the long, dry grass of the bushland, something had landed. The children described it as silver, perfectly smooth, shaped like nothing any of them had seen in any book or television program or dream. It sat in the grass beyond the fence with the impossible stillness of something that had always been there, as if it had not arrived so much as simply appeared, as if the universe had rearranged itself quietly around it while no one was looking. And then the figures emerged. Small, dark, moving through the long grass with a motion that was almost human, but not quite. The way a reflection in moving water is almost the thing it reflects, but carries within it something deeply, fundamentally wrong. Their eyes were the detail that destroyed the children's sleep for years afterward. Large, black, completely unblinking. Eyes that contain no white, no iris. No pupil in any configuration the human brain is wired to recognize as a living thing looking back at you. Some children ran screaming. Some stood frozen, not from bravery, but from something deeper than fear, something that exists below fear, the complete and total shutdown of every instinct, except the one that simply stares. And then the children who were closest to the fence, the ones who could not look away, reported something that no adult suggested to them, something that emerged independently from over 60 separate accounts given by children who were immediately separated before they could speak to each other. Words inside their heads, not spoken, not heard, felt, placed there the way you place a stone on a surface, deliberately, carefully, with full knowledge of exactly what you are doing, a message without a voice, a communication without sound, and the message, reported consistently across dozens of children who had never discussed it with each other, was this: We are watching what you are doing to your world. What makes this the most psychologically disturbing of all the details is not the craft, not the figures, not even the telepathic message. It is this: the children drew pictures. Immediately after the encounter, before they had spoken to each other, before adults had suggested anything, the children drew what they had seen. 60 separate children, 60 separate drawings. And when those drawings were laid side by side, the images were so consistent, so identical in their specific and terrible details. The shape of the craft, the proportions of the figures, the impossible enormity of those black, unblinking eyes, that the researchers who examined them went quiet in a way that said more than any words could. A psychiatrist who had spent his career studying the furthest edges of human psychology, a man trained at one of the most prestigious universities on Earth, sat with those children one by one and listened to their accounts. And when he was finished, he said something that has never been satisfactorily explained away. He said he believed them. Not that he believed something unusual had happened. Not that he believed they had experienced something psychological or collective or stress-induced. He said he believed them. Completely, without qualification. A man whose entire professional life was built on skepticism and evidence, looked into the eyes of those children and believed every word. Those children are adults now. Some of them have spoken publicly about what they saw that morning on the edge of the playground. None of them laugh when they speak about it. None of them wave it away as a childish misunderstanding or a collective imagination. They speak about it the way survivors speak about things that cannot be unseen, quietly, carefully, with a specific and particular way to people who carry something heavy every single day. One of them said this years later as an adult, and I want you to sit with these words for a moment before we continue. She said, "I still see the eyes. Every night before I sleep, every single night for 30 years. Those eyes, just watching, like they never left, like they are still there, like they're always going to be there. 30 years, every single night." That is what FearImprint means. Our final story tonight is the one I have been most reluctant to tell. Not because it is the most dramatic, not because the details are the most overtly terrifying, but because this story has no ending, no resolution, no moment where the door closes and the darkness is safely locked outside. This story ends with a voice on a radio, a metallic sound, and then silence that has lasted nearly 50 years and counting. Frederick was 20 years old, and he loved the sky the way some people love the sea, with a complete and total devotion that felt less like a hobby and more like a calling. He had been flying for 2 years. He had logged over 150 hours in the air. He knew aircraft the way you know your own hands, instinctively, intimately, without having to think. On an October evening, he climbed into a small single-engine plane and took off into the darkening sky above southern Australia for what should have been a simple training flight across a stretch of open water. He had flown this route before. He knew it well. He filed his flight plan. He received his weather briefing. He took off into a sky that was clear and calm and completely, perfectly ordinary. 41 minutes later, he made a radio call that air traffic controller Steve Roby, the man on the other end of that transmission, would describe for the rest of his life as the most disturbing thing he had ever heard in his career. Not because of what Frederick said, but because of the way he said it. The way a man's voice sounds when it is describing something his mind cannot accept, something his eyes are showing him that every other part of his brain is screaming cannot be real. Frederick radioed to ask if there was any other aircraft in his area. There was nothing on radar, nothing in the sky. He was completely alone above that dark stretch of water. But Frederick could see something. Something with 4 bright lights hovering approximately 1,000 feet above his aircraft, moving with him, matching his speed, matching his direction, as if it had chosen him specifically, as if out of all the dark sky above that vast and empty ocean it found him and decided, this one. Over the next several minutes, Frederick's transmissions grew more disturbing with each exchange. Whatever was above him was not behaving like any aircraft he had ever encountered. It circled him. It came closer. It hovered directly above him, stationary, while he continued moving beneath it. His engine began to run roughly. His instrument began to behave in ways that instruments do not behave. And then Frederick said 4 words that air traffic controller Steve Roby has never been able to forget. 4 words that changed the nature of everything. It is not aircraft. What followed those words was 17 seconds of a sound that has never been identified. Not by aviation authorities. Not by acoustic experts. Not by anyone who has ever heard the original recording, and tried to explain it using the known catalog of sounds that aircraft and engines and radio equipment are capable of producing. A metallic scraping sound, rhythmic, deliberate, like something enormous moving against something else enormous in the darkness above that small and fragile plane. And then the transmission ended. Frederick was never found. His aircraft was never found. Not a single piece of wreckage. Not a single fragment of metal. Not one item of clothing. Nothing. Over one of the most heavily trafficked stretches of water in the southern hemisphere. Nothing. On that same night, across the region below his flight path, multiple independent witnesses reported a green light moving at impossible speed through the night sky. A photograph taken by one of those witnesses shows something in the sky that has never been convincingly explained. Frederick had taken 4 life jackets with him that evening. Standard procedure for a flight over water. Life jackets float. Wreckage floats. Bodies in life jackets float. Nothing floated. Whatever found Frederick Valentik above that dark ocean on that October evening kept him completely, without leaving a single trace that he had ever existed in that sky at all. 3 encounters, 3 sets of witnesses, 3 moments when ordinary human beings looked up at the sky and found something looking back that had no business being there. Thomas and Margaret, who lost 3 hours and never recovered the people they were before that mountain road. The children who drew the same eyes from 60 separate nightmares and still see them 30 years later every single night before sleep. And Frederick, 20 years old, in love with the sky, gone without a trace into a darkness that gave nothing back. I want to ask you something before you close this video and go back to your ordinary life in your ordinary world. I want you to think about the sky above you right now, not as something beautiful, not as something vast and indifferent and safe. Think about it as a place with depth, a place with distance, a place where things can move without being seen, watch without being watched, choose without being chosen. Think about how small your ceiling is, how thin, how little it would take for something that has crossed distances your mind cannot conceive to simply look through it. Are you sure nothing is looking? Once a fear is imprinted, it never leaves. You are watching FearImprint. Subscribe, turn on your notifications. A new fear is waiting for you every single day. And tonight, leave the light on.